Welcome to the Horror Hour.
Hello, and welcome to the Horror Hour, the show where we discuss, debate, and disagree on all things horror. Today it'll be just myself, and I will be interviewing the director of Cursed Films, for, the Shudder exclusive, Cheel, and speaking with executive producer Brian Robertson. So, 1 second, and they'll be right here. So, firstly, for you, Jay, I have to ask, where did the idea for Cursed Films come from?
It's a good question. I think so. I did a short film before season one of Cursed Films called Twisted, which was a sort of prototype in a way to this series, even though I didn't know this series was coming. It was about a urban legend in my hometown that a tornado hit a drive-in theater while the movie Twister was playing, and this is something that's been talked about in my hometown for years since it happened. So I did a short investigating that, and my friend Owen Shiflett was working with Shudder at the time, and they were talking about this concept internally and looking for directors, and he asked me if it was something I'd be interested in. I think knowing that I love horror films, but also having seen that short documentary, and I then pitched to them my take on this material, and they liked it, and it kind of went from there. So it was kind of a their initial concept, and then developed by myself and them into kind of where it landed.
Nice, that twisted, really freaky.
Yeah, you should look that up. It's an interesting story.
Oh, too. And for you, Brian, what was it that attracted you to the project?
I mean, to be honest, it was probably working with Jay. Didn't know Jay, but I had seen his film Twisted, and I'd seen his second feature documentary, which was called Beauty Day, which just got a Blu-ray release, actually. And so I was working with a production company in Toronto, and they had been connected with Shudder, and Shudder suggested that we all work together. So I was happy to get to know him, and I just wanted to work on something with him.
Nice. Well, speaking of Shudder, how has it been working with Shudder for obviously season one and then season two?
Terrible. They're amazing. Shudder's amazing. They are super collaborative, and they give us a lot of room, and they give Jay specifically a lot of room to work. And Jay's editing all 5 episodes as he did on season one, and they give us really good notes on the material, and they never stifle the creativity, and they only add to it. So I've always had a great time working with them, especially on this season.
Nice. Jay, is that the same for you?
Yeah, I agree. They trust us to go out and film these interviews for months at a time and come back with material that they know will lead to something interesting. And I think the conversations between us landing with all this material and getting to the point of a finished episode are really great. You know, there's a lot of, like Brian said, great notes, and we are kind of in line with the overall premise of the series and where we want to end up. So it's a great collaborative effort for sure.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So before we start discussing season two, I have to ask, for both of you, what was your favorite episode from season one?
Jay?
I know Brian has an answer.
I like all of them for different reasons. I think I'm like, partial to the episode on The Exorcist. I thought that it was a really interesting sort of look at that film and uh, an interesting sort of examination of how exorcism sort of became like a almost an industry in its own after the film was released, and we were able to bring an exorcist over from Europe to Los Angeles, and he allowed us to sort of sit in while he worked with a number of people that he had been in touch with over the years, and we documented that and worked it into the episode, and it was very illuminating. Maybe the strangest afternoon that I've ever had in my life.
Maybe the most depressing afternoon as well.
Yeah, it was very different, and I was really proud of working that into that episode. I was really happy with how that turned out.
Yeah, I mean, I think, across all five, there are differences in each one that kind of draw me to each episode for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of not necessarily a viewer, but having made them. And I just like to try to hit a balance between, treating a subject with whatever appropriate level of care that it requires, but also injecting humor in where appropriate, even if it's an observational, like not a joke resulting in a laugh, but an observational moment that suggests that something that's kind of funny about humans,
Mm-hmm.
So I think there are moments across season one that hit on that, and episodes that are hopefully people connect with and are great for different reasons. One might be a little more inspiring or funny or whatever. The other one is tragic and might affect people on a deeper level, and that's why that one works. So the short answer is all of them.
Good. Brilliant. So with
just a quick question: did you wear the shirt to match the background?
No, I didn't actually realize it was matching.
And the fingernail paint matches as well. Like, you're completely matching. I like it. Yeah.
It's just my life.
Yeah.
So with season 2, going into it, obviously, as we're aware, we know that the first 2 episodes are The Wizard of Oz and Rosemary's Baby. So while looking into these, was there anything that you found in the research where you were like, Jesus Christ, because you just didn't know that was happening, or that was a thing that had happened?
Yeah, I think for the Rosemary's Baby episode, the Victoria Vetri story is one that I had not seen talked about very much in regards to the connection of curse on Rosemary's Baby. That one was an interesting one, and it just kind of seemed to grow as we investigated it. And I think rather than, in many cases, it's not so much that a legend or a story is surprising, but maybe a character, an interview subject can be a surprise. And Julian Wasser as well, in the Rosemary's Baby episode, he's a photojournalist, and he's a very special person, a very great guy, and like just an amazing interview subject. But his strange connection to both Rosemary's Baby as an on-set photographer, but then also being asked by Roman Polanski to go to the Cielo Drive location of the Manson murders and take photos in the home for a psychic to use to get vibes from, to try to figure out who committed this crime. That to me is a pretty wild story. Like, it's the kind of thing where maybe immediately the connection isn't there, but when you think about like someone taking photos on a set and then the director of that movie's home becoming the scene of a horrendous crime that almost resembles a horror film, and having
Yeah.
that set photographer in the real home taking pictures, it's just a wild story.
And
And
then
we,
and then the psychic then taking those photographs and selling them to the tabloids.
yeah, there's
Just
just
insane.
that episode is very much I think it's one of my favorites, and it's really concerned with like the just sort of the era, obviously, but the tabloid nature of that story of the Manson murders, of the connection of Rosemary's Baby to those murders. I'm excited for people to see that one for sure.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it because I remembered the stories that you were telling, but I just never connected them. So when I
Yeah,
was watching, I was like, oh shit, yes, all of this is connected. Wow.
yeah. I mean, Rosemary's Baby, the film, it deals with like paranoia and conspiratorial thinking, and Rosemary herself in the film is making connections and literally like using Scrabble tiles to figure out names, and so I kind of wanted it to feel paranoid and a bit conspiratorial in the way that Rosemary does in the film.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
Mhm.
excellent. So with the first season of Curse Films obviously being received so well, was there a worry coming into season two that there wouldn't be as much to work with, compared to season one?
I don't think so. I mean, there's, if anything, the big difference is that season one dealt with kind of the heavy hitters of what people normally consider to be cursed films, or
Mhm.
at least in the horror sphere. So with the second season, the question was, can we dip our toe outside of that horror sphere a little bit and let the stories connected to the making of the films kind of be the centerpiece, and hope that everyone will come along for the ride. Wizard of Oz is not considered a horror film, but I certainly think it's horror adjacent and has elements of horror in it, especially for kids. And I think if you did a survey of, especially within a certain generation, what a kid's first memory of a scare on screen might be, I think a lot of them would say The Wicked Witch or The Flying Monkeys.
Yep.
So it makes sense. So yeah, I mean, it really was. There were lots of great stories, lots of great people to talk to. It was just, okay, how can we kind of come at this concept from a slightly different angle? Like, what does cursed mean? Does it have to mean supernatural? Now that we've dealt with the supernatural in season one, can it just mean a feeling? Can we say just, this, the making of this movie, you can imagine someone on set saying to themselves, everything is going so wrong, this feels cursed. It feels like this thing's cursed.
So Brian, for your role in the series, did you run into any snags when you were like securing rights to like images, videos, things like that to help you cover this season?
I mean, I think that, we designed the second season in a way that would give us a bit of flexibility with the volume of supporting visuals and archival that's needed for this. I mean, I guess one of the challenges was, and one of the differences from this season from the first is that the first season is a TV half hour per episode, and probably based off of the success of how that show was received, we sort of expanded the second season into a TV hour. So there was almost twice as much, real estate per episode that we needed to cover in terms of licensing and music and all those things. So, I mean, to Shudder's credit, they gave us a little bit more of a leash to work with, and they gave us much more support. And we just sort of set the show up in a way that allowed us to secure all of these things in order to fulfill, the extended sort of time per episode. So yeah, I mean, to answer your question, not really. Like we sort of have had what we needed to cover all of those things.
There's always that great element as well. Like we're often talking to people that worked on these films, and sometimes they have their own personal archive of material that, you know, they took pictures on set or took video on set, and Brian will always ask if there's anything that they're willing to share, and we travel with a scanner, and while I'm interviewing, Brian will be busy scanning photos, and so there's a lot of material that we get access to that, you know, helps us with filling the show out, but also might be images that nobody has seen in quite some time, which is cool.
Yeah, for sure. In the first season, it was Lance Anderson and his on-set continuity photos on The Crow, which were in a banker's box in his basement, which had certainly never been shown or seen by anybody. And in the second season, it was his son, David, who worked on a film called Serpent in the Rainbow in the makeup department. And he also had a book of continuity images that he had sort of dusted off for us and gave us access to, which is amazing. There's a whole bunch of stock images in that episode that no one's seen, which I think makes these episodes feel really fresh. Yeah.
Oh, that's actually, it's just really interesting to hear like businessy side of things.
It's very, very interesting. Yes.
Yeah. It kind of is.
Yeah. I mean, that's what the show is in a way too. Like we're looking at the behind the scenes of movies being made. So
that's true. Yeah, that's true. I never think of me scanning photos while Jay's interviewing people as interesting.
Well, it's always nice to know how the butter is made in it.
Yeah.
For sure.
So I've got myself mixed up. My page has changed. Sorry. So were there any films that you have looked into for season 1 and 2 that you may not be able to get into this one, but you think could be something there to look into for the future?
Sorry, you roboticized for a moment there. Can you repeat the question?
Sorry.
That's okay.
So is there any films that you have looked at that you could think could possibly have something there for in the future that you haven't been able to cover so far?
Right. So like films that maybe didn't make the cut in these. Yeah. I mean, there's we have like a long list of films that we picked these five films from, and it's really about, you know, starting, I think, at okay, is what is the film? Is the film interesting? You know, what is the history about surrounding the film in terms of cinema history? Are the stories connected to the making of it interesting, and how can we represent them visually? And then the most important thing, I think, is who can we talk to tell this story? And it's I think it's a lot of it is dictated by that, like access to people. And it doesn't necessarily mean people that worked on the film. It just means people who are passionate about the subject and might be able to provide an interesting insight that maybe we haven't heard before. So there's definitely some movies like that. Waterworld is one that I would love to do at some point. So if we're lucky enough to get a season 3, know that I will be pushing Waterworld.
Well, I would love to hear about Waterworld.
Yes. And then
I mean, a nice example of this is like when we were setting up season 1, we were thinking about doing this Russian film called Stalker, which is sort of an esoteric science fiction film from the late 70s. And it didn't make the cut in season 1, but it was something that we interviewed a couple people about, thinking that it might make the cut. And when the second season was ordered, we just slotted it right in there because it actually, although it's not a horror film, it deals with some, I think, Jay had quoted it as existential horror, which I think is appropriate. And it's the third episode in the second season. So we've got to go ahead.
That was an interesting thing because the first season started as 3 episodes with 2 films per episode. So the reason Stalker didn't make the cut is because we realized we have to have a whole episode dedicated to each of these stories, and 5 was the number of episodes that were ordered. So Stalker was left behind, not because the story wasn't interesting, but just because the number of stories changed. So we always had that in our back pocket, ready to pull out and tell that story, because it's an amazing one.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I look forward to that one dropping then.
Yeah.
So while you have been doing your research, for the ones that have released so far, was there anything that came up that you couldn't put into the shows that you wanted to, but just couldn't find a way of getting it in there?
Yeah. There's a story. There was someone we met named David Oman, who owns a house on Cielo Drive he calls it the Almond House, and he claims that his home is haunted by the ghosts of Jay Sebring and Sharon Tate, and we spent a day with him filming, and it was an amazing experience. It was a long day, but he has this energy that is just off the charts, and was a great guy. And at the end of the shoot, he had offered us some ribs and his homemade barbecue sauce, which was great. And unfortunately, within the body of the episode, we just couldn't make it work tonally. It just was too it was too out there, and it was just didn't feel like it was appropriate for the episode. But we're hoping that we might be able to pull something together and cut that into its own little 10-15 minute short, and maybe include it on the Blu-ray or something. We'll see. But that was a big day of filming that I cut together. It was in the episode for a period of time, and then was taken out completely.
Oh, that sounds really interesting, because obviously it's like double meaning as well, because it's connected to obviously the Sharon Tate stuff, but Omen.
Yeah.
Sometimes I guess it's not exactly like a thread that didn't make it into an episode, but all the time you end up trying to find someone who worked on a film, and they are either elusive for whatever reason, or you just can't find them. And that's happened a couple of times where you sort of feel like this person should be represented in the episode, and that person refuses to go on the record and talk about it. I think that's something that we faced, I guess, specifically in the 5th episode of this season, Cannibal Holocaust. There's a couple people who are just not willing to talk about their experience making that film anymore. So Jay did a really good way of representing those people in the episode in different ways.
Yeah, we did the where you put a picture of them and then you cut the mouth out, and
yeah.
I just talked for them, and it worked really well.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm really I'm loving the show, so I'm really excited for the next 3 episodes. So I look forward to it.
Glad, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for your time today. And
yeah, thank you so much.
I look forward to the remaining episodes of the show.
Thanks,
let us know what you think of the remaining 3.
Oh, I will.
Cool.
We'll be having
Thanks,
them
Liam.
all over our Twitter.
Great.
Take care.
Brilliant.
Take care.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us today. And make sure to stick around to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you get notified of any more upcoming videos that we have. Contact us on Twitter at The Horror Hour TV, same as Instagram. And we also do have merch. Links, they're in places. Find them. Goodbye.
You have been listening to the Horror Hour. See you next time.